Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, this is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms. I'm Alexander Leitner and this is edition, drumroll, 150. It's week 12 and it's 2024. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions, your comments, or your feedback. And you can do so using the email address editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media @Sandton Times and visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And if you're listening live on Mix 93.8 right now and not at a later stage on the podcast, well, you can use the WhatsApp line in the next hour. It's open on 084 822 0938. That's 084 822 0938. And a very special welcome to everyone listening. If you're listening for the first time, an extra special welcome to you. If you're a regular listener, an even more specialer welcome to you. If you're in Johannesburg and Pretoria, across South Africa, or anywhere and everywhere else in the world, if it's online or on air, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandtonland. And Vincenzo joins me behind the mixing desk again for another week. And yes, it's been another packed week in the Sandton Times diary, Vincenzo. I had a chance to meet British author and commentator Douglas Murray, who was in Sandton for a very brief visit to record a couple of interviews. And I managed to sit in on one of those very, very special recordings. And if you don't know Douglas Murray, well, he's written some incredibly popular books. And he's also regularly on all kinds of international TV channels, broadcasting from some of the most heartbreaking and treacherous places in the world. But Douglas Murray always sparks debate, conversation, and provokes you in all kinds of ways. And there'll be more of him on the Sandton Times website, so go have a look. Then also, I had a chance to MC 2 conferences this past week. The one was a Digital Transformation Summit, and the other one a Cybersecurity Summit. You know, it's always great to be exposed to different industries, to be part of different discussions. And both conferences had some very, very high-profile audiences. CTOs, CIOs, CISOs, if you're in that space, from some of the biggest companies in South Africa. And if you were in the audience, if you were part of it, well, thank you for making it a fun 2 days. And once again, also the event organizers, it was great to be part of that and to facilitate those 2 days. And I think we all had a great time. And yes, it's the 150th edition of the Sandton Times Hour. Can you believe it? It snuck up on us. And I wasn't quite sure if we should do something or we should just, do what we always do. But maybe we'll do something for the 175th, definitely the 200th edition. But right now, this week, 150 editions. And if you've been with us from the beginning, well, thank you so much. Those lockdown days were quite interesting. And if you've just been part of it, well, you can get into the archive. You can have a listen to some of the past episodes if you're keen to find out what we've spoken about in 150 hours. Probably more than 150 hours. But you won't be disappointed. I can tell you that. So coming up on this week's show, the world of travel is ever evolving and there are some interesting trends and developments for 2024. I'll be chatting to one of the domestic airlines in South Africa to get some more insights. Then we had the Oscars last week, and that was an interesting timing as well because our show was sort of going out as it was morning in Los Angeles. But never mind, let's not get into that now. You probably know who's won by now, but I'm going to be catching up with our US correspondent for a behind-the-scenes look at the Oscars, which should be quite fun, and I'll give you the full story in the next hour. Then for those subscribed to the digital audio version of the podcast of the Sandton Times Hour, there's a little bonus tidbit, a little bit of exclusive content only for you, and it's ahead of the World Oral Health Day this week. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Google, and you might get some little bit of extra listening there. Then there's a major finance conference which is heading to Sandton for all those interested in online trading, financial services, crypto, and payments. And I'll be finding out a little bit more about this for you. And finally, an NGO is looking to raise some much-needed funds for one of our public hospitals, and I'll be getting you all the details too. So let's kick off the hour with a bit of music. It's Imagine Dragons featuring Broiler with Shots, right here on the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8.
Promote your brand. Advertise your business.
Our audience could be your next client. Contact the Sandton Times today.
Your body is amazing. Give it what it deserves in 2024. Join Virgin Active today and get up to 4 months free. Or join on Premier at 25% off and train anywhere, anytime with unlimited access. Call 0860-GET-FIT or visit a club. virginactive.co.za. T's and C's apply.
The latest news.
The biggest names.
The best destinations.
The hottest entertainment. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms. Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to kick off this week's hour with a topic that I always enjoy talking about, which is travel, but also aviation. And of late, FlySafair released some interesting trends and key developments that are happening in the travel space in 2024. And here to chat to me about this is the Chief Marketing Officer of FlySafair, Kirby Gordon. He's been on the show before. Kirby, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour again.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Always great to chat to you guys.
Kirby, tell me a little bit more about this roundtable that you hosted with media. What was the motivation behind sort of putting out these trends and key developments?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are always interested in terms of what's going on in the aviation space. I mean, travel is obviously something that we're generally all quite keen on, and it's all want to participate in if we get the chance. So it gives us an opportunity to sit down and have a little bit of a chat with the various media that are out there to lay the land in terms of what South Africa looks like for the next little bit, what consumers can expect, what different trends are that we're seeing out there. Give a little insight into things like technology and maybe some of the pain points that we've got going on behind the scenes, and just kind of create a little bit of education and awareness about what's going on in the industry.
Now, over the last 2-3 years, those pay points generally were around when are airlines coming back on track after lockdowns? Why are prices of tickets very high? What happens if I have to cancel my flight and then rebook it again? Those seem to be a little bit of a thing of the past. I feel like there's some new trends and some new things that have sort of now come up and that are coming up. One of them to kick off with was the health of aviation infrastructure in South Africa. I know you touched on this previously when we had a conversation around fuel. There was issues with refineries. There were issues with ships not being able to drop off fuel. What is that looking like at the moment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, quite a lot has changed in terms of our infrastructure that we're actually dealing with sort of in a post-COVID environment. And fuel was definitely one of the big things that was a hot topic. We had seen that availability change. And I think just to give that kind of context in terms of fuel, most of South Africa's jet fuel and our requirements was actually refined here in South Africa, which, set out a certain type of dynamic. And then a number of refineries actually stopped refining jet fuel and or closed, which means that we had to start importing as a country a good deal, up to 70% of the jet fuel that we use. And that created new dynamics because now you suddenly had a difference in terms of the supply guarantees that were there. We were having fuel coming in via, ships. We were seeing issues around infrastructural things. So, I mean, there were a lot of challenges that were thrown our way. Rough seas, the disruption of the floods in Durban that disrupted the pipelines. And I think it was toward the end of 22, we sort of had a lot of news around, there's no fuel available in Cape Town, or there are concerns about fuel availability in Johannesburg. Largely, I think we've managed to start managing that process a little bit better. But what we are seeing is that, unfortunately, it is starting to hit the costs a little bit. Previously, the price of jet fuel used to really track very closely against the price of oil, of Brent crude. Now, there's a association with that tracking, and unfortunately we don't seem to go down as much as petroleum will, for example. When the oil price drops, there's a certain sort of elasticity, a certain bounce factor in jet fuel, which is hurting us.
I mean, you had some issues with infrastructure over December. I remember the baggage carousels breaking down at the most inconvenient of times over peak season. Of late, we've now seen concerns raised over Richards Bay Airport in terms of safety and security. Are these sort of the aviation infrastructure issues that are not going away?
Yeah, this is all typical kind of examples, I think, of things that have been going on, and I mean a lot of that. Look, we have to concede that airports were, as badly affected by the realities of lockdown and COVID and the kind of constrained movement through them as airlines were, or other travel companies, hotels, etc., etc. We sort of think of them as quite sort of fundamental, rudimentary kind of facilities, but they really do have a business model that works on the volumes of the passengers, and I mean it stands to reason that a lot of the airports had. They kind of did a lot of deferred maintenance due to cash constraints. And actually, what we saw at one point was that the South African Institution of Civil Engineering, they do a report card on international or on national sort of infrastructure around transport. And they downgraded airports in the country to a B- on their scorecard. And that was really around that deferred maintenance that was coming in. And a lot of that has come to roost now, most recently, as you said, the baggage hall issues at OR Tambo in December, these things that we're seeing around instrument landings, systems, et cetera, that are preventing low visibility landings in certain conditions. There are all these kinds of things that have coming to bear. The good news is, and fortunately, we literally had this on the morning of the roundtable that we did, is that the Minister of Transport has announced that they've green-lighted an investment of 21.7 billion rand into our airport infrastructure over the next 5 years, and not a moment too soon. So, we're really thankful for that, and we're really looking forward to seeing that go into the right places.
Well, doing a little bit of a detour, talking about safety, etc. I know we've seen a lot of unfortunate news in international headlines about Boeing and some of the issues that just don't seem to be going away when it comes to Boeing and their quality and checks, etc. How's that impacted South African carriers, or has it at all?
Yeah, there's definitely an impact, in terms of what we're experiencing in the market. So the reality is it's less about those kinds of safety concerns and the production concerns that they have, because what they're really struggling with at the moment is the production on their MAX models, their 737 MAXs, and there are none of those operating in South Africa at the moment. So none of us are kind of exposed to that on the front line. But the big significant impact we are feeling in the market at this stage is that Boeing had it in their plans to ramp up their production of the 737 MAXs. And they in order to ramp up that production, they needed approval from the Federal Aviation Authority in the United States. Following the Alaska Airlines door blowout scenario, the FAA actually said to them, look, we're not happy for you to continue that. We're denying that ramp up on production, which has had a huge knock-on effect onto the market, because what that means now is that a lot of future deliveries that they had in place for a number of the big airlines that were buying those new aircraft, they've now got indefinite delays on those deliveries. So those big airlines are saying, hang on a second, the fleet that we have now of older generation aircraft or even of existing MAXs, we need to hold on to now for longer, because the new areas that we thought we were getting are not going to be arriving anytime soon. So there's actually effectively a supply constraint on the 737 or narrow body model in the market, because of course every day there's an aircraft that's retiring, it's reaching end of life, but there's not a new one being thrown into the top end of the funnel. So the way that we experience that locally is when we need to do fleet renewals and when we're looking for aircraft to lease, they're more expensive to get than they were before. They're harder to secure than they were before. And of course, that all hits us on our cost line, And the problem is that there's a sort of similar thing happening actually with Airbus on their A320 range in terms of some engine concerns. So it's a double whammy. There's not even an opportunity to really kind of switch from one to the other, even though that's a iniquitously expensive and complicated exercise to do anyway. But the reality is there's this market constraint in aircraft, which is not great.
I'm chatting to Kirby Gordon. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of FlySafair, looking at some key developments and trends that they've released for 2024. We're going to take a quick break and more with Kirby, FlySafair, and travel trends right after this.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour. Online, on air,
Anywhere, anytime.
This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour, Mix 93.8, and also on all good podcast platforms wherever you are in the world. Make sure you subscribe and follow. I'm chatting to Kirby Gordon. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of FlySafair. We're talking about some key developments and trends that they've released for 2024 and beyond. And Kirby, one of the interesting things that you highlighted was the rise of the travel agent. And that was one of those things that people thought had gone with the fax machine, with the telex machine. I might be a little bit cruel, but it seems like travel agents are back in trend, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. Travel agents are definitely making a comeback, which is great to see. The basis for this, what we're finding is that there are more volumes moving through both online travel agencies and also your old traditional brick and mortar travel agencies. And in fact, it's a global trend. And we're seeing companies like Flight Centre in the UK, they're reporting significant increases in the number of stores that they're opening. In fact, I saw something similar this morning from Australia. We're seeing companies like TUI in Europe also opening up more and more offices. And at the same time, the guys that are operating the online travel agencies are seeing a big expansion in what they're doing. Even at home, there were some interesting stats that were released by Standard Bank in terms of their economic outlook for 2024, where they were reviewing their customer base and the spending behavior there. And Gulen Ballon, who's the chief economist there, was speaking about how airline spend has sort of recovered quite nicely, but travel agents, their share of wallet, increased quite significantly post 2022. It's really just been on the rise. So it used to account for about 1% of the total spend of their consumers, and it's now gone up to 1.5, which in relative terms is a huge increase, which is phenomenal for that industry. And I think really a testament to the value that the guys are able to add to a customer's travel experience.
I must say, one thing that I used to poo-poo was travel insurance. And ever since COVID, it's one thing that I actually don't leave the country without. And I'm assuming travel agents have got that safety factor where people feel like they can pick up the phone and speak to someone when things go pear-shaped.
Absolutely. And, I think that was the reality about what we saw, during COVID, was that there were a couple of people that, dare I say, sort of paid their school fees along the way and maybe had really wanted to have that sort of insurance in place and or have a travel agent on their side who was dealing with let's say, a basket of cases looking for a refund from a particular airline, has obviously the connections within the space and was able to kind of give them that value back. So that complexity that came about with travel, that and also, even in a post-COVID world, did you need a PCR test? What were the requirements for access to different countries? It was very difficult to keep up with a lot of those requirements. And travel agents really stepped in there and I think showed their mettle and proved their worth. And people enjoyed that functionality and that kind of assistance. And it seems that they've persisted by saying, well, listen, I really saw the value there. Let me keep going, because actually I'm prepared to pay a small premium for getting access to that kind of help and service.
You also highlighted that this past holiday season was a turning point for local travel recovery. And we saw all over the news how Cape Town seemed to have absolutely exploded when it came to not only domestic travel, but also international travel. And this is something that you've also highlighted as well.
Absolutely. Building again out of that insight that we had from the Standard Bank Roadshow, that was an incredibly useful and insightful presentation that was done there. And there seems to be this trend that is perpetuating. The consumers are feeling quite good about their financial status, which is strange because the interest rates are incredibly high and we should all be, I suppose, a little bit more conservative about what's going on, but it's definitely something that's out there. Equally, there's an interesting trend in terms of our consumer psyche at the moment that we're trading up our investment into things like goods for investment into services. So in a sense, almost trading out owning items for owning experiences and having experiences. And I guess we can read into that what we will in a post-COVID world. But it certainly has reflected in terms of the results that we saw around December travel, where people were getting out there. They were certainly going on holiday. They were certainly doing what they wanted to do. We did some surveys within our customer base, asked them things like, which gave us a proxy in terms of how much money they were spending, how frequently were they eating at restaurants, and then the results were really phenomenal. There were 52% of our customers that we surveyed who were flyers. So let's bear in mind that it's a certain market segment that said that they were eating at restaurants some days. I think it was a further 28% that said almost every day did they go to a restaurant. And then an additional 13% that said sometimes more than once a day, which is really interesting. So people were over this holiday period, I think, really trying to get that break, have those experiences. They were obviously feeling a bit free and easy with the money. I'm sure that made January 10 times worse, but that's the reality that the consumers were facing, and it's really interesting to see.
Well, the two last points that you touched on was the aviation technology in terms of where the future is going, but also sustainable aviation. And I was reading something not too long ago where Airbus had done its first sort of takeoff and landing and sort of flying of a plane without pilots, completely remote. I saw Rolls-Royce also did a very interesting test of getting ships up and running, container ships that are completely autonomous. So no crew, nothing, literally controlled from somebody sitting in a simulator somewhere, sending cargo around the world and maybe maybe with the issues we're having in the Middle East, this might be propelled forward. What are you seeing in terms of future aviation technology, and are we ready to be getting onto a plane that doesn't have pilots?
I'm not sure I am, Alex, and I'm a huge fan of everything that AI can do, but that does still, I think, fundamentally sit with a degree of discomfort, even though these machines are phenomenal and actually largely do fly themselves in so many regards, But I think it's not exactly in the near future. What we are seeing is this rise in AI, which is having a fundamental impact on our business and on our industry. And it's really kind of akin to two things. AI has this incredible capability to be able to deal with a case and be able to analyze and give you some sort of service and assistance. So we're seeing that sort of application in things like customer service, where airlines are really able to give a great facility to customers when it comes to the basic things, changing tickets, doing whatever it is you need to do, making purchases. We're also seeing that kind of facility being used in airports for amazing things like baggage screening, security, even ID checks and things, which is phenomenal. The other capability which really excites us is that AI has this functionality whereby it can really consume massive amounts of data and actually work with that data to pull out insights and even run hypotheses and test them to see if you're making differences. And that's what our business runs on. We work with an incredible amount of data. So especially when you look at the flight data that comes off of an aircraft, there are so many points that are given to us. So that really gives us a lot of capacity within our industry to start doing things like predictive maintenance, where from a maintenance perspective, we're able to effectively listen to our aircraft and get a sense of what's going on with each and every component and see those little telltale signs that might come along the way that something might be problematic or might need some sort of attention, and be able to address it before anything happens. That's great for safety, but I think the industry is already at a point where safety is quite impeccable. So this really allows us to get to a perspective where we can prevent those kind of nuisance delays. So you can see that stuff coming through. Fuel planning and consumption, that's a massive thing. There's so many different parameters that we access in terms of what we can do to reduce our fuel burn, which of course affects our costs and ultimately the fares. So any kind of refinement that we can run in terms of those massive amounts of data on fuel consumption is fantastic. Schedule efficiency, that's also important from a cost perspective. If we can work that metal as hard as we possibly can, again, we can bring down fares. And this AI, and it's incredibly complex. It's one thing to run an airline where you've got 2 airplanes, you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet, but when you're suddenly at 35 like we are, or 700 like Southwest is, it gets to be incredibly complex. So, these phenomenal kind of capabilities of AI are really going to transform the industry in the near term in that sense. And then maybe one day there'll be an empty cockpit without a pilot in it. But we'll wait for that for a while, I think.
Well, listen, if AI can just even out clear air turbulence, I'll be a customer for life, and I'm all for it. Kirby Gordon, Chief Marketing Officer of FlySafair, chatting to us about some key developments and trends for 2024. If you want to read those again or get some more details, hop onto the sandtontimes.co today. All the details are up there, and there's more for you to read and more links. And Kirby, thanks so much for joining us on the show. We're going to take a quick commercial break at the bottom of the hour, and more of the show right after this.
Back for more?
The Sandton Times Hour continues.
Welcome to the second half of the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. I'm Alexander Leipner, and that was Pink with Trustful. And I must be honest, I only found out it was called Trustful in the last week because I kept thinking she said trust fund baby, which I thought wasn't a bad idea to have a trust fund baby, but it's actually Trustful baby. And then I had to go find out what Trustful was. And anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, if you caught anything interesting on the show this week and you missed some details or you want to know where to get a hold of more information, well, we're going to put up everything on the Sandton Times webpage. You can go to sandtontimes.co.za and explore the show notes for this week and even previous weeks. If you're listening on the podcast, you might be going through the archive and you want to do that, you can do that as well. And there's some additional reading there for you, some additional links. And also don't forget, you can connect with the Sandton Times on numerous social media platforms at Sandton Times. And also if you're listening on the Listen app, well, you've got the mobile app as well. And you can listen to the show and also read some of the articles on that as well. So there's no excuse not to be connected to the Sandton Times. And talking about connecting, this past week we had the Oscars, and well, it was actually last week, and of course with time delays and obviously the timing of the show and timing of the Oscars, it wasn't easy to try and do it all at the same time. But I'm still thrilled to be connecting with Natascha Wittmann. She's in Los Angeles, or as they would say, Los Angeles. She's the US correspondent. She was at the Oscars, and Natascha, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
I'm honored to be here and talk to you about the Oscars.
Natascha, you were at the Oscars, and we briefly chatted during the break just to talk about what a wild time it is in Los Angeles during the Oscar season. But maybe you can give us a bit of an idea, paint us a picture of what happens behind the scenes and off the screen, the stuff that we don't see on television.
Yeah, I mean, as you just said, it's a crazy week because if people think, oh, it's only the Oscars, it's one day, you're mistaken because LA is basically a crazy town for at least a week before the Oscars. Every day there's like numerous parties from brands like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. They all have dinners and they all invite all the nominees because they all want to network, of course. Everyone wants to be seen and they all wear beautiful dresses all throughout the week. But then, of course, as we get closer to Sunday, to Oscar Sunday, you could tell that the energy is different in the city, definitely, because also half of Hollywood the roads are closed down. You can see like some FBI agents here and there, like a lot of police. There's like hundreds of different police forces, people that I've never seen, like different dogs trying to sniff out some bombs under cars. So it is every year, it's gotten more and more intense, the security detail. And I mean, Oscar Sunday itself, I have to say, is from a reporter's point of view, the easiest part because, okay, we're all watching the show and especially inside the Dolby Theater, it's not as glamorous as you would imagine. Because of course the celebrities are sitting, I think there's like seats for like 4,500 people inside the Dolby Theater. And it's like everyone, of course, is watching the show. But then as a reporter, you're sitting in a back room with like hundreds of other journalists and correspondents. And it's freezing cold. So you need a jacket, definitely, over your dress. And you're basically waiting for the winners to come out on stage and give an interview after they won the Oscar. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, we're all basically excited who's going to win. And every year is different, but yeah.
Amazing. Well, it sounds really fascinating. And I remember somebody telling me the story about attending the Oscars and that that people also come and go during the show. Obviously, we don't see this on television. They have then people who kind of fill the seat so it doesn't look sort of empty in the room, and they kind of keep the seat warm until that person comes back from their cigarette break or their whatever break that they have. But it doesn't stop at Oscar Sunday. I mean, does it carry on afterwards, sort of into Monday and Tuesday?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely into Monday. Tuesday, I think everyone is out sleeping, or at least I hope so. But of course, after Oscar Sunday, there's numerous after parties. You have the governor's ball where all the nominees and winners go to. There's no press allowed. But then, for example, I was at the Elton John viewing party and they have Elton John was sitting at his piano playing. And Heidi Klum was there. So the Elton John party is more for celebrities that don't usually go to the Oscars, but they're still important enough to go to like a big party anyways.
Well, that's very kind.
I know, yeah. It's very kind. But the ticket prices, I mean, you're looking at prices up to $300,000 for a table of 20 people. Yeah. Yeah.
Going to be,
but I mean, at least it goes to the AIDS Foundation, the Elton John AIDS Foundation. So
okay, right. I was going to say, there's going to be 20 people you really like for $300,000. You better have your bestest friends there, and they better be sending you Christmas cards for the rest of your life if you take them to that dinner.
Yeah, that's the least they could do. Yeah.
You do a lot of media work, especially for German press. I mean, that's sort of your mother tongue. Germany had a really good representation at the Oscars, and what was that like? I mean, obviously that must be keeping you especially busy because when there's German representation in terms of actors, I'm sure you must have been very, very in demand.
Absolutely, yeah. That was especially wild because we had Sandra Hüller, who was nominated as Best Actress, which is a big, big, big deal, especially for us Germans, because that rarely happens. Maybe we get a nomination here and there for best foreign language film, but yeah, best actress, that was a big deal. And of course, the newspaper I worked for, one of them is Bild Germany. It's a huge, it's a major tabloid newspaper. And of course, they wanted to know everything she's doing in even before the Oscars. So I had to kind of talk to my contacts here and, for example, hire a paparazzi who kind of followed Sandra around so that we knew, okay, she's staying at that hotel and she's eating here and she's going there and she's attending this party. So I kind of had to know everything around her stay here in Los Angeles. But then, of course, we also had the German nominee Christian Friedel, who was nominated for The Zone of Interest, which is actually a British film, so it wasn't necessarily considered German. But of course, I chatted with him the day before the Oscars, because Germany, always the day before the Oscars, we have an event at a beautiful mansion in Pacific Palisades here, for the listeners who know it. And every German nominee was there, and so we were able to talk to them beforehand. And Christian, for example, told me, he was like, I'm just blown away that we're even here, because he's never been to the Oscars. So for him, it was just a beautiful experience all around. And then lastly, we had the Teacher's Lounge, which was nominated also as Best Foreign Language Film. And they were so cute. I mean, for example, one of the two main actors were father and son in real life. The son was only 14 years old, and just to experience it with his dad was such a beautiful thing to witness. And I spent some more time, I spent a day with the two of them and kind of got to know them a little bit. And yeah, it was cute to see. Even though they didn't win, I saw them and I met up with them after the Oscars, because they had a specific after party for the Teacher's Lounge. And they both told me, they were like, listen, we're happy we were there. We're happy we experienced it. Being nominated is a big thing in and of itself. And so they seemed very happy and content. And of course, I asked them, what was it like to sit in the Dolby Theater? And they were pretty German and very blunt about it. They were like, listen, we were all the way in the back. We looked down on the heads of, I don't know, Ryan Gosling, but that's about it. We couldn't really see anything. So it wasn't as glamorous for them, because of course, only the big people sit in the front rows, and then everyone else is kind of can see maybe this much, but it was still a big experience for them. And one thing that was funny, because you mentioned it earlier, that people usually go out and when they sit inside the Dolby Theater, they go out to get a smoke or grab a drink or something. And the director of the Teacher's Lounge actually missed his category, because he was out, I think, in the bathroom or somewhere. So if they would have won, would have been embarrassing for him, because they don't let you back in.
Oh, wow.
If the show is running, the doors are closed. So you can't go in and out while the show is going. You have to wait for the break.
Well, there you have it. Natascha Wittmann giving us an impression all the way from Los Angeles of her week at the Oscars and all the stuff that happens behind the scenes and around it. It almost sounds like more drama and action off screen than on screen. She's the US correspondent, and Natascha, it's been great to catch up with you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Online, on air,
Anywhere, anytime.
this is the Sandton Times Hour.
Well, an interesting day that's coming up this week is World Oral Health Day, and it's celebrated or marked on the 20th of March, 2024. I was reading a stat now that nearly 3.5 billion people around the world suffer with some sort of oral disease. I mean, it sounds quite hectic. And considering that oral diseases pose a major health risk as well to the rest of your body, I suppose it's a very appropriate theme that having a happy mouth also means that you have a happy body. The World Health Organization estimates that the global cases of oral disease have increased by 1 billion over the last 30 years. So when your parents say brush your teeth and maybe even floss your teeth, maybe you should listen to them. But one person I'm going to listen to right now is Richard Meyer. He's the general manager at Curaprox. And Richard, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks, Alex. Nice to be here.
Richard, let's talk about oral disease in South Africa. What is the impact on overall health if you suffer from some sort of oral disease?
Oral disease is obviously highly prevalent, as you pointed out in your stats earlier. The prevalence is even higher in South Africa, and there's really a lack of dental and oral health facilities and a strong workforce in many communities in South Africa. Our public dental sector is almost non-existent. So the burden is very great in South Africa. It impacts the rest of your body. The mouth is the gateway to the body, and without a healthy mouth, you can't have a healthy body. And there's many other systemic diseases that are starting to be linked to poor oral health.
I mean, one of the things that many people might be dealing with at the odd meeting is halitosis, if someone's got a mouth that does smell a bit. Yeah. But I'm assuming we're talking about things that are way more serious than that.
Yeah, 100%. I think halitosis can be sorted out quite easily with proper oral hygiene and looking after your tongue's hygiene. But more seriously, there's diseases such as heart disease, Alzheimer's, very, very high stress-related diseases, all linked to the bad bacteria that forms in your mouth through poor oral hygiene.
I mean, it sounds like a little bit more of like preventative care here, which I suppose is always the better thing than having to sort of do some sort of severe intervention. I mean, what kind of tips do you have for people to make sure that their oral health is what it should be? I mean, what is the bare minimum? And then what's sort of like the Rolls Royce of oral care?
So I think that is the great thing about oral disease, is that it is a very preventable disease. Myself, I think the best two tips from us is mindfulness in terms of your oral health regime and consistency. So making sure you're following that regime every day, twice a day, brushing, flossing, and then being mindful about how you actually brush and brush along the gum line, brush tooth by tooth. What brush are you using, and know what all the chemicals and stuff are in the products that you're using, and make sure that they're all healthy for your mouth.
And this is not a hugely expensive exercise. I mean, people say, "Oh no, it's too expensive to brush my teeth." I mean, that's not really the case, is it?
No, I think most people, I say that in a general way, but a lot of people do have access to basic oral health tools that they can use, and if you use them on a daily basis, you're going to prevent most of the oral diseases that are out there.
Yeah. What kind of research and development is happening in the oral care space? I mean, what kind of innovation are we seeing?
I think in terms of products, there's a lot of technology that's coming into products. There's fancy brushing apps linked to a toothbrush that really help to motivate and kind of show you where you're brushing nicely, that sort of thing. I think holistic dentistry is really a big thing these days. Making a lot of dental practices and oral care practitioners are making oral care instruction a big part of your dental appointment, and I think that's very important. And then, we've seen a lot of innovation in the pediatric dental product space, ensuring kind of correct jaw development from a very early age, getting children used to using oral care products from an early age, and making sure they're using all the right products at an early age.
And I suppose that's the foundation of good oral care. Because I think if you're not looking after your teeth when you're young, I suppose it's not going to get any better as you get older.
No, that's when those habits are certainly formed.
Yeah, and also I suppose any underlying issues then become worse as you get older. I mean, then you're having to basically try and repair what you missed out on when you were younger.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a big misconception that your first set of teeth are going to fall out anyway, and you don't need to look after them. But if those teeth fall out early or they become diseased at an early age, can lead to serious problems down the line. So it's vital to look after your teeth from an early age and set that foundation from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, it is the Sandton Times Hour, and I believe you guys have got something planned for World Oral Health Day in Sandton City. What have you got lined up?
Yeah, so World Oral Health Day is really a fantastic day. It was started by the World Institute of Dentists based in Switzerland. And it's all about spreading, positive information about the importance of oral disease. We actually involved in two events. One in Malusi Holistic Primary Health Center in Pretoria. We're partnering with the University of Pretoria on their outreach program. And then at our event in Sandton City, we actually have a kiosk in Sandton City, And we will be really emphasizing the importance of oral health in children. We'll have 2 oral hygienists at our kiosk, and they'll be doing fun brushing exercises with kids. There'll be lovely competitions. We'll have our Brush Hour board game on display. And it's all very, very kid-centric. And yeah, if you're in the Sandton City Mall from the World Oral Health Day on the 20th to up to the Saturday the 23rd, come and visit us and see what all the fun's about.
Absolutely. And so you just touched on this now, and I was trying to ask you, I mean, having your teeth professionally cleaned sort of once or twice a year, is that an advisable thing? Is once or twice a year enough?
I think it's absolutely vital. So your dental professional, whether it's an oral hygienist or your dentist, forms a big part of your oral health, your overall oral health regime. And we recommend going to visit your dental professional at least every 6 months.
Okay, well, there's a good tip. And if you are in Sandton City or close to Sandton City, pop in there for World Oral Health Day. Make sure your kids' teeth are 100% or at least on the right track and they're forming the right habits before their teeth fall out or worse things, as we discussed on your greater body. Richard Meyer, General Manager at Curaprox. It's been great chatting to you. Thank you so much.
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour.
If you're into trading, if you're into finance, if you're into business, well, there's a very interesting conference that's coming up, an exhibition later on in May. And it's called the Finance Magnates event. It's going to be hosted at the Sandton Convention Center from the 20th to the 22nd of May. And to get a little bit more insight into this, I'm joined by Andrea Badiola Mateos. She's the Chief Commercial Officer for Finance Magnates. And Andrea, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Andrea, some South Africans might not be familiar with Finance Magnates. Can you give us a bit of an oversight as to what this media business is all about?
Absolutely. So Finance Magnates, it's a group, actually. We have a lot of different activities. They're all focused around the world of finance. We started back in 2008. We were the very first provider of B2B news in the world of finance in electronic trading. Since then, we just started growing and scaling up the business, adding events to it from 2012. So we've been at it for 12 years already. We've done events everywhere from Tokyo to Istanbul to Chile, Barcelona, and London. This is going to be our 12th year in a row. And we decided to take it to South Africa last year, 2023.
Well, it's good to have you coming back again, and especially coming to Sandton. If I got you right, your real finance niche is that space of where the finance world is going. It's fintech, cryptocurrency, the entire trading space in terms of technology. Have I got that right?
Absolutely. Yes. We work across 4 verticals, we call them. So we work in electronic trading, which is focused on investments. And at that level, you have different actors, some that are retail. So they focus their business towards traders, people that want to start their trading journey or increase their trading journey. So for that, we have one portal that is called forexlive.com. And then we have financemagnates.com that is more institutional kind of news to be on top of regulatory trends and new technologies coming out there, acquisitions, who's the new CEO of these, what is a merger of that, who's sponsoring what, to be on top of, let's say, the high politics of the industry. And then we have the cryptocurrencies, like you mentioned, so all the digital currencies, and then payments and banking is a big thing for us as well, because we include it across the group in many different activities, from the panels that we discussed during the events, the exhibitors, the networking opportunities that we offer, and obviously the news that we cover on our portals.
Amazing. It is a fintech event, it is a finance event, but what do you think sets this one aside from so many of the other finance and business expos and conferences that we have coming to South Africa?
I mean, we're one of a kind, to be very honest, not to be modest, but we did start the business first in 2008. We have a huge amount of experience in conducting events since 2012. Our events are extremely well known. Like I said, we've been doing them all over the place. Anybody can check them out online. I mean, you can see all of the videos. The quality of what we produce is unparalleled, which is why they're so popular. And we were never covering Africa until last year. And then we decided to dive into it, and why not jump into the African market? And South Africa was our go-to because it's a booming market. There is more and more demand every day from global providers to local brands. We see an emerging industry that is just exploding in South Africa, and we wanted to make sure that this networking can be facilitated, and we are known for providing the highest quality of networking place where retail as much as institutions can come, do business, have fun as well, because there is a social aspect to it, of course, make sure that business grows. So we gather everybody offline in the events and online through the portal.
You talk about networking, and I'm glad you touched on that, because I was quite interested to find out from you who you find is generally the audience that comes to this event. Are these venture capitalists? Are these traders? Are they startups?
Mm-hmm. So we have in South Africa, it's what is called a B2B2C event. So we have global brands that are institutions that are coming to South Africa to meet with the local market, be it other institutions or be it retail traders. So we have, on the one hand, an offering with a specific room that has content for traders, education, workshops, all these sort of activities that the traders will enjoy, and the social aspect of it as well, like the parties and so on and so forth that everybody enjoys. So there is the offering for the retail. And additionally to that, we have all of the high-level networking for institutions, because they also, when there is a company that wants to travel to do business in South Africa, they cannot just jump on a plane and schedule 2 full weeks of meetings here and there. So they utilize our events as a platform where in 2 days they can meet everybody nonstop. And there is so much networking happening, so many deals long-term that are created, synergies. And there is a lot of discussion going on that this is very important, because when it comes to trends and what's next, you need a place where people can gather at the same time and discuss and move forward in different topics. And you need to be aware of what's going on that doesn't necessarily get to the news, and be able to talk to face-to-face to these people. So that's what happens during the events. We have the content side, we have the exhibition side with the stands, we have the workshops, the education, and we have the parties.
If people want to attend, where do they register? Where do they go?
Very easy for anybody in South Africa. They just type on Google FMAS 24, which stands for the Finance Magnates Africa Summit 24. And they will be able to see there the ad, so they can click on it. Or alternatively, they can go to events.financemagnates.com, and there they will see our upcoming events. So South Africa is the first one coming up, and we have others later in the year in Australia, London, and working on the next one.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll put all those informations up on the Sandton Times website as well. So if you couldn't write it down or couldn't remember what it was, don't worry, just go on sandtontimes.co.za. We'll have it there as well, and we'll provide you with the links. Andrea Badiola Mateos, Chief Commercial Officer of Finance Magnates. It's been great having you on the Sandton Times Hour. We're going to take a quick musical break, and more on the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
Connect with the Sandton Times. Email editor@sandtontimes.co.za.
All right, as we almost wrap up the show for this week, that was Alok Ella Iyer and Kenny Dope featuring Never Dull with a Deep Down. You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms. And my next interview is another one of those really interesting ones, emotional ones, feel-good ones. You can decide afterwards which one you want to go with. But I'm going to be joined by Melissa Williams-Platt. She is the co-founder and trustee of Footprints for Sam, but she's also Sam's mother. And with that introduction, Melissa, I welcome you to the Sandton Times Hour. And maybe you can give me a little bit of context as to what it means when I say Sam's mother and Footprints for Sam.
Well, firstly, that just warms my heart. Thank you so much, Alexander. So it's a difficult one, especially as we celebrate International Women's Day this month. I am Sam's mom, but sadly, Sam is no longer with us. He died in 2016. He spent his entire life in hospital, all 15 and a half months. And each day without him is absolutely heartbreaking. But what we've tried to do through his legacy, just to really soften the heartbreak as much as we can, my husband and I, when Sam died, looked at how do we make it different for other children? How do we make this journey of pediatric healthcare one that is about the human being, one that is about both sides of the stethoscope, where the patient is cared for as a human, as a whole person, mind, body, and soul, where the health professional remembers that they're a human being and it doesn't get too clinical, and in that the child gets lost. My journey with Sam was one that was privileged. You know, we had private healthcare, and yet in that context, I felt unseen and unheard. And when Sam died, he died in Cape Town. He then moved from another private facility through to an amazing government facility, Red Cross Children's Hospital. But he died of sepsis because he'd been in hospital for way too long. And we were just not heard as parents. And along this journey, through private, through state, we saw so many children that were alone. And, you know, through a kind of a lens of privilege, we thought, why were they alone? Why would anybody leave their child alone to suffer and even sadly to die? And then we realized that, you know, when we took off this stupid limited lens and realized that parents just can't be there. They don't have money for transport. They don't have money for food. They might have other children that they need to look after. They might not have leave to be with their children. And the spaces that doctors have to operate in are so tough. And as a result, their compassion is failing. And, you know, they're also heartbroken. So we looked at what was our journey and how do we take all of those elements and just shake up state healthcare, private healthcare, although our focus is obviously state, and really look at a healthcare system that works for both the patient and the health professional to really protect patient outcomes. And because of that, Footprints for Sam was born in 2017.
You know, I'm having such deja vu with this conversation because I had a very similar conversation with a mother as well who'd also lost her little boy. Ended up starting a movement as well, and very much similar conversation came from the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, and said the moment your child is in hospital dealing with a terminal illness, all the money in the world, even the contacts, I mean, literally to the point where she could phone up the CEO of the blood bank and say, listen, why is it taking so long for blood to be delivered to the hospital? And we were talking about hours. We weren't even talking about days. And even in those positions, you are left without any resources, any help, any hope. And you think, my goodness, if this is what's happening with people who've got the knowledge, the resources, the contacts, what is happening in our health system for people who have none of those options? I mean, you're literally left to fend for yourself. And it is quite frightening to think about that. But what I found quite interesting is that you decided to set up your own organization around this. Why not the option to support or get behind an existing organization that might be doing something similar? Why the option to kind of do your own thing and go your own route?
I think that's such a complex question, and, you know, certainly something my husband and I debated. And I guess for us, it really was because it was Sam's legacy, and governance is so important because you want to be in a situation where donors trust you. And I am all about relationships. I'm all about making sure that governance is in place and that we can run a trust that makes a substantive difference. Because we're talking about big money. We're talking about CSI initiatives that make a tangible and measurable impact. So we did start by supporting other organizations, but we realized that our vision was so big and quite specific in terms of our focus that we didn't really fit in. And that said, I work on other boards. I'm a director of another board for Kids Kicking Cancer, as well as on a committee and chair, sort of involved with another organization called Patch South Africa. Just to clarify, I'm not a chairman there, but I sit on their board. So it's really how do we align? So we don't stand alone from other NGOs. We work together and collaborate so that we also don't add costs to our organization. But what's key for us is making an impact. So we have 6 measurable pillars. We do transport to and from the township to the hospitals. We look at areas that we can renovate, and we have a big project where we literally are shovel ready to renovate the neonatal ICU at Rahima Moosa, but that's a massive project. It's over 80 million rand. We provide Wi-Fi in hospitals, so patients and parents can be connected to health professionals. We do food and love and care buckets. We're actually about to drop about 180 buckets at hospitals across the country as we speak this next week. We do support and training, we do scholarships, and then we do advocacy around human and heart-centered healthcare. So as you can see, it's very, very specific. And our trustees have a big stick that I have to measure up to make sure that we really get to these deliverables and that we are able to make a substantive difference and bring hope. You mentioned hope. Hope and dignity is so key in these communities.
Well, look, we're going to put some more information up on that ambitious project. I think you call it Dare to Dream campaign, that 80 million mark that you want to reach to renovate the neonatal ICU at Rahima Moosa Hospital to commemorate the hospital's 80th anniversary or 80 years of service. So if anyone's out there that thinks this sounds like something you want to get behind, we'll put the information up on the sandtontimes.co.za. You can get those details there. Melissa Williams-Platt, Sam's mother, co-founder and trustee of Footprints for Sam. It's been so good to chat to you, and thank you for making the time to be on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you. All the best. Thanks for chatting.
And that's all we have time for this week on the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8, and as always available as a podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and many other digital platforms around the world. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media @Sandton Times or visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And feel free to send through your questions, your comments, your feedback. All of those are welcome. And thank you to all our guests for this week. Vincenzo as well, thank you for your hard work. 150 editions. I know you haven't been part of all of them, but nonetheless, it's good to be celebrating that with you. And of course, thank you to the Sandton Times team as well as everyone at Mix 93.8. Let's wrap up the show this week with a real kicker. It's Mikasa and You Not Us and Chucks. Thank you for listening, and let's do it again next week.